Welcome to RV Out West. I'm your host, Brooks. My family of four's base camp is located in the beautiful Pacific Northwest, and our RV adventures radiate out from there. Please grab a mug of coffee and join us as we discuss RVing around the American West. From sweet camping spots, gear and equipment, to tips and tricks, we've got you covered. We are RV Out West. Our friends Tim and Rahana took their family on a cross-country American road trip in the summer of 2021, driving over 17,000 miles from Seattle, Washington to Florida and back. Today, we start a two-part mini-series as they share with us how they prepared for this trip, the route that they took, and the cool spots they visited along the way. So thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, so first off, let's start a little bit. You guys have relocated to Washington State. So kind of tell me a bit about where you're from, the journey that brought you here, and a little bit of your backstory.
Originally, we're came up from Florida, but we're not from Florida. I'm from Missouri. She's from Ireland, but we lived in Florida for 35 years. And we kind of got tired of that environment, and we were looking for something else. And we used to travel a lot to Ireland, and we're like to move to Ireland. And then once we came to Pacific Northwest for vacation, we fell in love with this area because it's very similar to the climate of Ireland, and the people were really nice and friendly, much better than that of South Florida.
Yeah, we love this area. We came up for our 5th anniversary. We came into Seattle, spent a few days, and then drove up to Vancouver, British Columbia, skied for the first time up in Vancouver, and then up into Whistler area, and just always dreamed about it. And when we had the opportunity to relocate for work, Colorado was on the list, Denver area, and then all of a sudden Seattle popped up. And so we went for it. And in 5 weeks, we sold our house, car, packed up the U-Haul, and trucked it across the country. Well, I shouldn't say we, you did it, not me.
So how many times have you guys driven then coast to coast?
Well, this is our first trip for me going coast to coast. Tim's done it before.
So when I got the moving truck to move up here, that was my first time driving across the country. And so I had that experience. That was it.
So then you had your move out and then just what you guys did this last summer.
Yeah.
That's it.
This was my first time doing a road trip. As a family, we never did road trips like that growing up. I think the furthest that we ever went was North Florida. We traveled internationally, but we never did road trips. So I had no idea what we were in store for. And it was kind of crazy. We got our travel trailer, and Tim can speak to that. He knows all the specifics, but just earlier this year.
Yeah.
And then we were sitting around and thinking, hey, why don't we travel to Florida? It would be safe. We didn't want to fly with COVID. We had plans to go to Ireland in 2020, and that was canceled due to COVID. And we figured, well, what could we do this summer that was fun? Since we weren't going back to Ireland this summer either, we just said, let's do it. And
I thought she was nuts because we had only taken like our first trip just to see how that went.
Yeah.
And then maybe I think we did it another weekend. And I thought maybe that's all we would do all summer is just hit a bunch of local campgrounds. And she got this great idea to go to Florida. I'm like, okay.
So it was her idea.
It was her idea.
Actually my idea. Up until this point, we had only camped, I think, twice in the camper.
Okay.
After we picked it up at, that local park kayak point, which is only, a short distance for us. And that's it. We had no experience prior to this. And so we just went for it. We said, let's do this.
Good for you. So in your planning stage is fine. So you guys went ahead and decided we're going to do this. Kind of, how did you guys start your planning process as far as, just...
Well, we had a lot of dreams and a lot of conversations talking about things that we'd like to do if we ever got a camper. And then that reality, came around, and now we started looking into it even more. Like, where would you like to go? I don't know. Where would you like to go? That kind of thing. And, we had some major things that one day we'd like to go to Moab. One day we'd like to go to Yellowstone. That type of thing.
Well, we planned very loosely. I was really busy at the time because in 2020, I was working full time, had a new position. I was homeschooling the kids. And so I have to say I didn't have much involvement with the purchase of our camper.
Okay.
Tim and you, the two of you kind of picked them out together. And I showed up for the walkthrough and we finally got it. And even in terms of prepping for this trip, Tim did most of it in the evenings while I was dealing with homeschool stuff at night. He was watching YouTube, round the clock, figuring out things on the camper, looking at campsites. So I kind of put together a very loose itinerary saying, all right, well, we'll be, in Oregon on this day. We'll do a few days in Idaho. And we sort of started developing our itinerary based on booking places. Yeah. And unfortunately, we were really late in the game in terms of bookings. We didn't realize in the camper life how far ahead people book.
Yeah.
So for us to start planning in March of 2020 for the summer was really late in the game. A lot of places were booked up. We had no luck with getting any kind of spots in the national parks. And because of it, we ended up staying like an hour away from some of the national parks, which was a little bit of a trek. Had we had the foresight and the timing to plan it, we could have had better use of our time and less time, commuting back and forth. But we made it work.
I think just knowing major spots that we wanted to hit.
Yeah.
And then that was the first step. Okay, we know we want to hit like Moab, but what's between Moab and our house? Okay, we could stop at Bonneville Salt Flats. Okay, now we know that we got to go through the Utah, and then we know that we're going to go through Oregon. Anything we want to see in Oregon, and we found the Oregon Trail.
Just kind of kept just drilling down,
totally.
down. Okay.
And some places we found along the way. I mean, we really loosely planned. We knew where we were stopping for the night. And then sometimes while we were driving, I was just checking on my phone, like, what's in this county or what's around here? And that is literally how we planned our trip. Like when we were in Albuquerque, for instance, we found a Sandia Parkway aerial tram. I had no idea that was in Albuquerque, but as we were approaching, I was like, oh, this looks cool. And I bought tickets on our phone.
That's right. And I made sure we didn't drive more than 400 or 500 miles a day. Like I wanted to be done by 4:00.
So were you doing 6-hour days then? About-ish?
Yes. So there was a handful of days that there weren't any activities or there weren't any good campsites. So we would stretch that day out to maybe 6 or 7 hours.
Gotcha.
And sometimes, too, we try to coordinate our days where if we knew it was going to be a lot of driving, we would stop in a particular city and do something fun for a few hours to break it up. But then some of those days turned into like 9 o'clock. We were rolling into campsites. I think about when we went into Oklahoma City. We had so much... there was so much interest in all of our parts at the memorial that was there. I could have spent all day going through it, but we had to actually kind of cut it short. And by the time
we were on a tight schedule.
Yeah, by the time we rolled in that night to the campsite, it was late, but it was worth it. I'm glad we took
that
the
memorial
time.
is incredible.
It is
It's
phenomenal.
incredible.
And I didn't, we have two boys that at the time were 10 and 11. I wasn't sure how they would appreciate that memorial, but they took so much interest into it, which was really terrific.
Yeah.
And part of, just going back to your question on planning, part of our planning, and this is kind of on the fly too, is we would listen to podcasts leading up to where we went. So we actually had a 5-part podcast that we listened to about the Oklahoma City bombing, leading up to arriving into Oklahoma City. I think the day before and the day of we were listening to it, so the kids had some background
fresh knowledge.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
and
great.
And it really made such an impact going through the memorial and walking through the grounds and looking at the reflection pool. And then when we went into the museum itself, which was super amazing and interactive, and I wasn't sure how it would be taken by my 10 and 11-year-old at the time, but it was made in such a way that all age groups could really appreciate the information and absorb the material. It was terrific.
That's great. So also in other parts of the planning, how did you do food? Like how did you handle groceries and laundry and just kind of those, well, actually, let me back up really quick. How long were you guys on the road for?
We left June 4th, and I think we arrived.
It was 16 days.
Was it 16 days?
16 days to get across country. You guys took 16 days. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, can I say that we originally wanted to work on the road, not take as little vacation as possible, but at the last minute we decided not to and just focus on having a good adventure, and then work when we got to Florida. So once we were making that trek, we found out internet was not a thing.
Yeah, I took that for granted. I really did. I just assumed I would have internet service everywhere, and you don't. And
So,
I'm glad we didn't make that
It
commitment.
was
to work.
16 days.
That would have been stressful.
It
was-
would have been.
So, but, to get back to your original question of planning, we really wanted to try and not eat out. I mean,
Right.
we wanted to eat some local food and stuff like that, but our main intention was to utilize the camper as much as we
safe.
can.
Right. And,
Stay indoors, stay away from crowds and other people.
right.
That was one of the reasons of getting the camper was
But
to,
so then how did you handle getting groceries then?
So in terms of food planning, I think I packed way too much food when we left. In
Okay.
retrospect, and this would be one of my tips to share, just buy food along the way. Before we left, I had done some like crock pot meals and like Ziploc bags to put them in the freezer. We did quick meals like spaghetti. I know the first night was our leading out of our trip was kind of a bit of a disaster the first day, and we rolled into our campsite. I think it was like 10 o'clock at night, and the kids had macaroni for dinner, which they were very amused at. So we just went with the flow. We stopped when we were hungry. Sometimes we would pull over and find a park, or I know when we were at the Bonneville Salt Flats, we just opened up our slide and had lunch there. And,
Yeah, great. Awesome.
So
Yeah, okay.
it was
Just got-
terrific.
that's
But
great.
we definitely packed too much food. I would say pack some and then do like a
Grocery
pickup.
shop along the way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
we did a lot of Walmart. Like we
Yeah.
pulled into Walmarts
And
and
did the click list.
And yeah,
Just because there's a Walmart everywhere you go.
Yeah.
Like that's consistently there. In terms of packing for clothes, I wasn't sure what to pack because I heard that it was cold in the Dakotas. So I had to pack, I felt like, for a lot of seasons. I was determined not to have to do laundry on the road because I didn't want to be stuck at a laundromat waiting for clothes to dry. So I literally packed 2 weeks of clothes for all of us. And then I also packed warm clothes. We never touched the warm clothes except maybe a sweatshirt once or twice going through like South Dakota. Occasionally I had to like wring some stuff out and hang it up, in the camper shower. But for the most part, when we rolled into Florida, I think we had like 6 bags of laundry. We had a lot of laundry rolling into Florida. But,
It's like your college days. You come home to
Totally.
see family and you're like, hey, by the way.
you know how inside the camper you can lift the seats up and
Yep.
store food? We had like bags of dirty clothes. And it didn't smell in the camper or anything. It was just, I'm not doing laundry on vacation.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it worked out.
Was there any prep that you did for your trailer, Tim, to get your trailer and or your tow vehicle prepped for a distance of this magnitude?
getting the camper and also planning for camping and like in long distances, a lot of the research that I did led me to one of the first things was get a surge protector. And I ended up getting, and I did a lot of research on those. That led me to getting a hardwired inline, Progressive Industry surge protector. And that thing was great. And then also I was hearing a lot of news about tire exploding and ripping your camper apart and whenever they shred and having a blowout and an accident. So I got tire pressure monitoring system that helped me maintain the correct tire pressure along the way, and also I could tell the temperature of the tires. If I noticed they were getting too hot, we could pull over and rest, or if they were getting too low, I got a portable air compressors that I could blow the tires up if I needed to. There was a lot of little things.
Airbags for the
Oh yeah, I got airbags on the truck so I could, level it off and bring it back up to where it only lost 2 inches, but the airbags helped bring that back up. And I think I was I went to Catskills to measure like how much I weighed because I had no idea. I didn't want to overdo it. I totally overdid it. But
we overpacked too. I think there's a lot of things we wouldn't pack next time.
we got a rack for our kayaks, and I brought 4 kayaks, and we used them twice because every state had rules and regulations on getting them licensed, getting them certified. They had to get inspected. There was all this stuff, and it was like, we'll rent them or not even use them.
I don't think I would bring kayaks again
No,
after
we'll rent them.
this experience.
Glad we didn't bring bikes because you could rent those everywhere too.
Yep.
Scooters are easier. You can fold those up and throw them in the truck.
Yeah.
Generator.
Oh yeah,
That was another
I bought
one.
generators thinking I was going to use them everywhere. But then we got to Badlands, and thought about, well, hell, if we're running the generators, we're not going to get any wildlife. So I stopped using the generators. But I'm glad I had them.
Well, now I very much would like to dig into the road trip itself and talk a bit about what you did see. And did you take 16 days both ways, coming and going?
Yeah.
Okay, so you did 16 days on the road both ways. So kind of why don't you give me a little bit of your route overview highlight real quick, just like, hey, we left out of Seattle and kind of this was our route. And then, yeah, if there's some highlights that you want to share that were memorable and pretty beautiful and whatever, I'd love to hear it.
So I had to write it down before this interview because I couldn't remember how many states we actually had made it through.
Oh, yeah, total miles.
So
what was your total mileage?
I don't even know what the total mileage. I just
No
know it was
idea.
18 states. And some
Okay.
of those states we hit up multiple times. Like I know Tennessee, Idaho, we seem to come in and out of a couple different.
So when we left, I had a fairly new truck, and because of COVID, we really didn't go many places except for local campsites. So when we left, my truck had around 8,000 miles on it. And when the truck was done 2 months later, that's 16 days to Florida, just hanging out in Florida for a month and then 16 days back. When I came back, I had 25,000 miles.
Okay. So about good 17,000-ish miles. Yeah.
Easily.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. But yeah, tell me about your route.
So we left Friday. I think it was June 4th. It was a Friday. And we had a rough start because I had gotten sick the week of, and I was behind in prepping for everything. I was behind in work trying to get out the door. So it was literally a situation where we were just throwing things in the camper. I'm like, just throw it in. Just
We'll
throw it
figure
in.
out when
We'll
we get
figure it
stopped.
out when we get
Yep.
stopped. We'll pack it away. Just get it in. Just get it in. Let's get it. And I think we were shooting to get on the road at noon, and I think it was 3 by the time we left. So we were really kind of behind. We rolled into Pendleton, Oregon campground, and it was a beautiful drive going through Washington. I had never gone too far east or south, and so there were areas that I had never seen before. Seeing all the wind turbines, that was my first time kind of going
Solar
through
panels.
Washington. That was beautiful. And then we stopped there for the night. Did you like that campground? Because I did.
So I
pretty.
didn't know what to expect with KOAs because it was our first time, and it was just a basic regular KOA. There wasn't a lot going on
But it
there.
was nice.
But it was nice. And if you're going to just drive through from area to area, KOA is the way to go, and just boom, stop there, hook up. I mean, if the spot would have been bigger, I wouldn't have even unhooked. I would have just kept it going because literally we got up, ate breakfast, fed the dog, walked the dog, and left. There was no reason to stay.
Yeah,
Just
it was
kept
just
going.
we're just passing through. And there's
Yeah.
3 different levels of KOA. There's, what is it, Journey, Holiday,
And resort.
and resort, right?
Yeah.
So we kind of stayed at all 3. So when we were in Oregon, we stopped at that Lewis and Clark Interpretive Trail, which was really cool. And that was, again, an unplanned, unexpected find, which was terrific.
Yeah.
But it was closed, the actual museum part itself. However, there was rangers out there, and they had a bunch of wagons, and they kind of were still giving tours and talking about life during that time. So that was actually very neat. As I mentioned before, we were homeschooling the kids, so a big component of this trip was reinforcing things that they had learned education-wise to make it real and come to life. So that was one of those moments where things that they learned about on the Oregon Trail, they got to see and experience. We drove through the Blue Mountains. That was really, really nice. And then from there, we headed over to Idaho, Twin Falls. I
Spent a
can't
couple
remember the
days
name
there.
of the campground. That wasn't a
Thousand
KOA.
Springs.
Was it Thousand Springs?
Yeah, and it too was like no real frills, but it was on the Snake River, so we
Yeah.
stayed literally on the Snake River
That's
for that.
cool. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah, that was terrific. Idaho Falls was a little bit of a gem. I wasn't expecting. I had no expectations, I guess, of Idaho Falls. And when we got there, there were so many cool things to do. We went kayaking on the Snake River, and then there's the Perrin, I think it's the Perrin Bridge, and people base jump from there. So we just hung out in our kayak and were watching
people
people
jump.
jumping off the bridge, which was really cool. And the kids had a blast.
Did it give the kids any ideas?
I'm sure it did. Yeah.
There's one of your children in mind I have who's probably I want to do that.
My little adventure.
Yeah.
Yep. So we had a good time there. We were following some Instagrammers that had gone to this area. So we had gotten a lot of really good tips on places to go. There's a waterfall that's like right local in the center of town. And there's not even a parking lot. You just pull off onto the side of the road. And it's how many, like 200, 300 feet away? And you can walk behind the waterfalls.
Oh,
and
yeah,
it was
that was
really
really
cool.
Oh, that's pretty
and
neat.
it was
Yeah.
really neat. And it had a beautiful view of the city. I just really liked Twin Falls. It was Twin Falls. Sorry, I was going to say Idaho Falls. It was just really beautiful there. It was unexpected. There
Cool.
was some other cool places there was an overlook. Remember the camper that went off the bridge?
Yes.
Oh, right.
It was
I remember
right there.
that. Yeah, I remember that
Devil's
story.
Washbowl Outlook. That's what it was.
So you drove over that bridge,
Oh yeah, we
Yeah.
drove over it. Yeah.
Yeah, we did.
and you didn't end up in the same situation, so that's good.
Thank goodness.
No, but there's a path you can walk off, and just kind of overlook the gorge that's there.
Yeah,
it's
and that's
pretty cool.
amazing because
Yeah.
in the position that is, it's just in this like completely flat area. And there's all of these cracks in the earth and you don't really think much of it. But when you go over that bridge, which looks like it's just going over a tiny stream, it's really like a 200-foot drop.
Yeah.
And that's where that
Absolutely
truck was
beautiful.
hanging over.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was terrified when I saw that picture.
And then another thing that we did there that we had no idea about until we started planning was Shoshone Falls, which is considered the Niagara Falls of the West.
Okay.
And that was absolutely stunning. We had a good time checking that out, and, getting ice cream, walking through the park. It's nice. I would absolutely recommend Twin Falls at any point. Lots to do there. Really fun. But that was the first time we found out about no internet.
Oh, right. There was nothing.
We had no internet.
Did you
for
guys,
several
speaking of
days.
the internet, did you guys bring a hotspot
We
with
did.
you besides just using your phones? Did you have
We
a
did.
dedicated
So,
hotspot?
We had Xfinity phones, but then that's really Verizon. So I wanted to get something that was on a different network completely. So in case we didn't have one, we could have the other. And so we got a T-Mobile hotspot. But it really didn't matter. All the way across the country, if this one didn't work, neither did the other. So there was even times where we found ourselves using the Wi-Fi, our Google Maps, to get somewhere, and we lost internet and had no idea, and the map didn't tell us, and the map just kept going like it was if we were driving, and we would pass things.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So I would rely on a real navigation system if I were going to do this again.
As we conclude the two-part mini-series in 2 weeks, we will cover their trip from Utah to Florida as we discuss the stops they took along the way. It's time for our pit stop. And in today's pit stop, I want to share about the most influential road novels that have impacted me over the years and are more than likely responsible for feeding my addiction to go and see what's beyond the horizon. In no particular order, let's start. Number 1, Travels with Charlie by John Steinbeck. It really should be no wonder about why I love this book so much. If the first 3 pages of this book haven't gripped you, then I don't know what else to say. Steinbeck does an incredible job of really explaining the internal metronome of wanderlust. Plus a man traveling with his dog, and the way he personifies his camper, Rocinante, which he named after Don Quixote's horse. This is a great book that celebrates what Americana is all about. Number 2, On the Road by Jack Kerouac. What 20-something has not been influenced by this book? The beats, the poetry, the damn the man attitude, the whiskey, it all just speaks to a generation of travelers who are searching for the answers as they begin to realize what adulthood really may mean and rally against it. The freedom of adventure, the freedom of being unchained by schedules, and to just be moving is what I find so inspiring. Number 3, A Walk Across America by Peter Jenkins. Written in the 70s and shortly after graduating from university, Peter Jenkins and his dog walk from Maine down to Louisiana, and this travelogue shares stories of his adventures. But what I like most about it is that he shares about the people he meets along the way. These tales show how we are all bound together, and that the struggles and the happiness that we all have are all more similar than we are different. Number 4, Into the Wild by John Krakauer. I've read and reread this book, I think, 5 times. No matter what side of the fence you're on, if you think Chris was foolish and unprepared, or if he was a modern-day folk hero, this nonfiction book weaves an incredible story of a man looking for answers for his own truths. Before he died in Alaska, he had crisscrossed across this country in some wonderful adventures, and his open, transparent, and honesty show that he was a deep thinker and that he was on a quest for his answers. There are a couple of honorable mentions that I wanted to make. Hell's Angels by Hunter S. Thompson. This is one of those first books that really begin to define gonzo journalism. It was one of his first books where he started interjecting himself into the narrative as he rode with the Hells Angels. The Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test by Tom Wolfe, as he travels along with the merry pranksters as they drive around America. And the reason that I added these two as honorable mentions, I serendipitously read On the Road, Hell's Angel, and then the Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test. And what's fascinating, and I had no idea until after I had read these 3 books, because I read them back to back to back, and it just was a stroke of luck, but that there was a particular party in La Honda, California, where the Beats, the Hells Angels, and the Merry Pranksters all get together to have a party. And each of these 3 books talk about that one weekend, 72 hours, from all of their different perspectives. And it was really fascinating and actually quite lucky for me to stumble upon that. So if you are looking for some summer reading, maybe a revisit of On the Road, Hell's Angels by Hunter S. Thompson, and the Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test. In our next episode in 2 weeks, we tune back into the second half of the Meyer's Great American Cross-Country Road Trip as they will further regale us with their route from Utah to Florida. They visit a bunch of gyms along the way, and you will not want to be left hanging. In the meantime, please be sure to share with your friends and family about this podcast, and head over to Apple Podcasts and leave the show a rating and a review. If you've not yet subscribed to the show, please do so that way you'll never miss an episode. Now, get out there, explore, and go see what's beyond the horizon. Thanks so much for listening to RV Out West. Join us again in 2 weeks with our next episode. Please like and subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or wherever you choose to get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. And I sure would appreciate if you left a rating or a review of the show. Special thanks to Scott Holmes Music for providing the intro song, We Are One. RV Out West can be found on Instagram and Facebook, where you can interact with us and follow along on our RV adventures around the Pacific Northwest. So get out there, explore, and go see what's beyond the horizon.